Okay, all right. Welcome. So you guys are interested in nursing, I take it. Today we're mostly going to be talking about the dual degree program. There are other opportunities if you were to graduate with, make this bigger, with an undergraduate degree from the University of Dallas and then go on to a nursing program and then what we call a post-bac program, or even going straight into a master's degree. So there are other paths, but I want to be really clear that the University of Dallas's program is that we are a dual degree program, which means that here at UD, you'll be getting a bachelor in biology, and then you have to go to TWU to get your BSN. So for people, and I'm just saying this primarily because of the fact that sometimes I get contacted by multiple people that are interested in our program and they want to just go directly into a BSN. We are not the institution for that. We do not award a BSN. We just award bachelor's in biology degree. So you might be asking, why then do some people do 2 degrees? And one of the big reasons is that in the nursing field, if you have a Bachelor of Biology and also a BSN, it does give you some level of upward mobility, and it can usually lead to higher pay ultimately and maybe even more job opportunities. I also think that you're probably more well-trained and more well-rounded because especially at UD, we have a very, as you all know, strong core, and that means that you're going to be taking a lot more humanities classes and that someone else that would be at a different institution would not have. And so as a result, there's multiple benefits to this. So I also wanted to mention real quickly too that it is also possible to become an RN without even having a BSN. So you can actually have like an associate's degree and then go on to be a nurse in some capacity. But again, it's going to be very limiting without a BSN. So traditionally, nurses do get a BSN, and that will give you the best mobility within your career. And then layering the bachelor's degree from in biology from UD will give you even more mobility. So this is just information here on what UD is and what TWU is. I have a suggested course schedule. We did recently re-sign our contract with TWU. And so there are some differences. So currently in 2022, if you are a junior or a senior, or let's say, well, actually it's more like sophomore and junior because you guys are only here for 3 years. So I think about things a little differently. So if you're in your second or your last year, then you are going to be underneath of what I call the old rules. And I'll explain what those are. And then if you are a freshman, you're going to be underneath of this new umbrella. And all prospective students will be underneath of the new umbrella. So mostly the difference between the two is contracts are that previously we had a lower GPA for entrance, so 3.0. And as always, and this is still true, that you have to score 65 or 64% or better on all portions of your TEAS, which is your entrance exam that you need to take in order to apply to the nursing program. That is different for the new contract. So before it was 3.0, now it's 3.5. The reason why they're upping the ante is because of the fact that nursing school is increasingly competitive, crazy enough, but it is. And as a result, there are multiple internal TWU biology students, for example, that they are applying to the nursing school. And in order to be competitive, you have to have a 3.7 or a 3.8. And so they were turning away their own students to take on students that had much lower GPAs from an outside institution. So they're considering us more like their honors program, which requires a 3.5 GPA. So TWU does have an honor school, and those students can get in with a 3.5. And that's due to the rigor of the curriculum. And so we, in our discussions with TUAU, I said, well, we are like your honors program in that our curriculum's difficult and it is very comprehensive. They're taking a lot of classes that other students aren't taking, like Orgo. And so as a result, it's more difficult. And so the GPAs might be less than 3.7 or 3.8. And so they went down to 3.5. You still need to score at least a 64% or better on all of the T's sections in order to be accepted. But also the other difference is we effectively had unlimited spots previously. However, we never really sent more than in any 1 year, 5 students. So they were concerned that especially if our enrollment is growing, how many spots are UD students going to be taking up under this old contract? And now we're basically becoming more of a UD place than a TWU place. So as a result, they're limiting it to 5 people per year from UD. So that means that this now, unlike in the past, it was automatic acceptance for as many people as possible. 3.0, that is the old way. So for sophomores and juniors. And so for the freshmen, it could be a competitive process if we have more than 5 people that want to go. But if you meet those minimum requirements, a minimum of a 3.5 GPA, 64 or better, and we have less than 5 people, then it won't be competitive. If it turns into a competition sort of situation, they're probably going to be looking a lot at your test scores and your GPA scores. But other options do exist, like I said. So if for some reason you get to the end and you are at a 3.4, right, and you're not making that cutoff, then there is another way. And the other way is that you would just stay here, finish your bachelor's in biology, and then look for alternative post-baccalaureate programs. And so in this document, which I'm going to send around to everyone, actually, I'll just send it to the whole bio list. You can look here at this website, and it will bring you to accelerated baccalaureate and master's degrees. So basically, they call it an accelerated program. I hate to use that word though, because I think it is a little bit misleading. I wish they would call them post-baccalaureate programs, but in any case, there are multiple different, there's program basics here, fast track in nursing education, accelerated program, graduates, and then just like some other information and citations. So you can look here and you can find a program. So you can click here, you can find a program, you can enter a school name. There's, I think, over 268 of these programs across the United States. So it might also be one of those things where you get to the end of your 3rd year and you're like, yeah, I want to stay at UD for my last year, and then maybe go home wherever home is for you to finish this off. So that's also another option. I do not know. So a lot of times people will be like, oh, well, what do I need to know? I want to go to St. Louis University for nursing. Like, what are my entrance requirements? And my answer is going to be go to their website, because there's no way I can memorize program requirements for 268 schools. And that will be found on that website there. Now, if you are like in this dual degree program, you're going to click here for a coursework checklist. So it's going to ask that you make a copy of the document, because I'm pulling it from my main document. I don't want people getting in there and like making all the changes and then screwing my sheet up. So I'll ask you to make a copy. So you just click make a copy. It'll copy into your own Google Drive. And then you can actually start filling this in. This is a spreadsheet. So this is basically what we use in the biology department for advising purposes. So when my students come into my office, usually I'll go over, hey, this is what we talked about the last time you were in my office. Are you still registered in these classes? And I fill this out. So, this, you put the semester and how many credits you get for that class here. And so you'll see this is our core humanities requirements. So the one difference that I want to point out between a straight bio major and a bio major as part of the 3-2 program is that our straight bio majors that are not part of the 3-2 program only need to take AMCIB 1 or 2. They do not need to take both. However, if you're going into the dual degree program, AMCIV 2, well, having both AMCIV 1 and 2 is a nursing program pre-req. So you do need to take both AMCIV 1 and 2. One thing I do want to note that you will note on here, and you should hopefully already know, is that none of our biology majors have to take Lit Trad 4. So a lot of people do get Lit Trad 4 if they've taken AP credit, but we don't, it's not going to count towards your degree because you don't do that. It would count as just a credit, but it's not going to count really for the humanities core because you don't need it. So we have our AMCIVs 1 and 2, Phil and Ap, Human Person, Philippine, and Bible, Western Theotrad. We do have a modern language requirement. And in the previous materials that my predecessor had created, they had assumed that students were going to test out of their first year of language. The reason why I think that they did that is because this is a very intensive curriculum, and it was one way for her to kind of squeeze everything in 3 years. But in my 6 years here, the reality is that I have very few people that are testing out of that first year of language. A lot of times you might have a student that tests out of the first semester, perhaps if they had a lot, or if they had a little bit more, maybe they might test out of the first year. And the reality is too, even if you're a native speaker, like let's say you're a native Spanish speaker, many native Spanish speakers don't test ahead of the 4th class because it's mostly culture. And so it's lots about grammar and speaking. So in any case, just to note, I actually made that alteration where I fit that in now because honestly, most of my students have to fit it in. So I'm going to go through the suggested course sequence with you in just a minute. But then we have econ, politics, and art and architecture. You still can go to Rome, obviously, because all the classes you take in Rome are classes that you would need anyways. But what it does mean is that you're going to be stacked, meaning that like your Rome semester is going to be all humanities. And then in another semester, you're going to have a lot, you're going to be super heavy math science, right? Because now you've taken the humanities and stacked them into one semester. So that is the one alteration. A lot of people are under the impression that going to Rome means that it's going to lengthen their time. It does not lengthen your time because all those classes you need anyways. But it does mean that you will have some very, very heavy math science semesters. And so thinking about whether or not you're a strong enough student to handle that is definitely something that maybe you should discuss with your advisor. And then this is the biology coursework. So Gen Bio 1-2 lecture lab. You do need anatomy lecture lab, physiology lecture lab, micro lecture lab. The other thing that you're going to need is an org to population lecture. For our biology majors, as most of you already know, it is divided into biological hierarchy. So all of our classes fall into either molecules to cells, cells to organisms, or organisms to populations. So microbiology falls into that molecules to cells category. Anatomy and physiology fall into the center category, which is basically cells to organisms. But the largest category in terms of biological hierarchy being organisms to populations, and I lovingly call my category, although really Dr. Toby has some classes in there too, and Dr. Cody's disease and society class also falls into that category, although I do have to say, note that it is a 3,000 level. So you do need to take a 3,000 level. So unfortunately, because of the rigor of the program, it does not allow for 2,000 level biology classes. So you can't take disease and society unless it's something you want to do above and beyond, and it'll probably result in staying a little bit longer. But so 3,000 org to pop classes would be things like ecology, evolution, animal behavior, let's see, what marine biology. Dr. Toby's bioinformatics class also counts. And so, these are the sorts of classes that are going to fall into that category. You also need nutrition. And one thing to note is there are sometimes people do take nutrition off campus. And nutrition on our campus is a 3,000 level class. So if you take it off campus, a lot of times it's a 2,000 level class, and you do need 33,000 level or higher classes, 30 credit hours. And so if you take this off campus and it's a 2,000 level, that'll meet your nursing prerequisite, but it's not going to count towards your upper level, 3,000 level or higher electives. As a result, I have this here, just in case you would need to add more electives in. So, and I have stars there to denote that. So only needed if a student takes, and the other thing is lifespan is sometimes also taken off campus. So you need to be careful with whether or not it's a 2,000 or 3,000 level. If lifespan or nutrition are taken off campus at the 2,000 level. And then pathophysiology is a biology class that you would take at TWU that gets back transferred in. In other words, you go to TWU, you're gonna take pathophysiology, it comes back in and gets added to your credit total. And so that is another biology elective that you're gonna take at TWU that will also count for our degree here. Your biology core, besides your biology coursework, is Gen Chem 1 and 2, Orgo, Lecture Lab. So Gen Chem 1 and 2, Lecture Lab, and then Orgo, Lecture Lab. And then the one difference between the biology major, again, if you stay here, you typically are going to take biochemistry or biological chemistry, Orgo 2, as your chem electives. But pharmacology is what you're going to take at TWU, and that counts as a chemistry class here. So you do not need to take biological chemistry or Orgo 2 in order to meet that chem elective requirement. And then you also do need physics 1 and 2 lecture lab. It doesn't matter whether it's trig-based or calc-based. I get that question sometimes. It can be either. And then calculus 1 and intro to stats. And the important thing about the math with intro to stats is some people ask me, can I take biostats? And the answer to that is no, because intro to stats is what's required for your nursing prereq. So biostats is not going to meet that prereq requirement. And so unlike by the way, in my normal, like my non-nursing biology students, they sometimes can take biostats in that spot there. But for nurses, it needs to be intro to stats. There's a few other additional nursing prereqs that are not included. So basically all of these classes are classes that you would take if you were a normal bio student, like non-nursing students. So these are classes down here that are additional prerequisites for Texas Women's University. And so you have to take general psychology. You also have to take Texas government, and we, being a private college, do not offer Texas government. So my students typically take this online through a public institution like UNT, TWU, A&M, UT, something like that, right? And so you're going to take that at a Texas State University or college. And then you also need developmental lifespan psychology. We do offer, of course, Gen Psych and developmental lifespan on our campus, but you have to recognize that they're only taught certain semesters. And I want to say that lifespan is only taught in the fall. So you have to be really aware of when things are being offered. That's another thing to note. There is one other class that may be required, but I always tell my students to hold off on taking it. And this is called Women's Multicultural Women's Studies. And that is a state Texas requirement. So any student that goes to a state Texas school and wants to graduate with a bachelor's degree has to take a course like that. And as a result, if you have graduated from UD ahead of time, which you can do, so you can physically graduate from UD at the end of your 4th year if you've met all the degree requirements. Now, and that would mean you wouldn't need that class because you will, when you graduate from TWU, you already have a bachelor's degree. But I have to say that before you would make that decision to do that, I would definitely meet with the TWU financial aid department, because once you graduate with your bachelor's degree, it may put you into a different financial category, you know, when you fill out your FAFSA and things like that. I have had students though that are paying for it like out of their pocket. And so as a result, then that wouldn't make as big of a deal. But if you're relying on some financial aid, that might be a conversation that you want to have with TWU. That brings me to another point, that everything that you have to do with UD is here, but the minute that you go to TWU or you're talking about classes at TWU or financial aid at TWU, UD has nothing to do with that. And so you have to ask them. So you have to ask their admissions office. You have to ask their, advisors. You have to ask their financial aid department. And so you are literally attending a different institution. If you want to graduate at the end of your, well, even after you leave UD, let's say you leave UD after your 3rd year, so you're at the beginning of your 4th year, you are basically put on pause. So, and a lot of times those students actually still show up on my advising list, and they're just basically, they're there, but they're kind of inactive. So of course, obviously you aren't going to owe money to the University of Dallas if you're not taking classes here. But you're kind of still in our system, sort of in a limbo situation. In fact, sometimes from the dean's office, I'll get a frantic email. This person hasn't signed up for classes. I'm like, yeah, they're a nurse and they're TW. So no worries. So in any case, this is all of the classes that need to be fulfilled for the dual degree program on UD's side. Once you get to TWU, let me go back to this, and I'll go over, this is my suggested course schedule, which if you do want to complete it in 3 years, does require summer classes. I guess I didn't, yes, okay, here's the TWU coursework that you would need to complete there. So they call this their J1, J2, S1, S2 semesters. So your junior 1 would be things like clinical comps and concepts, nursing assessment, pharmacology, pathophysiology. So you are seeing that you're taking those 2 courses that need to back transfer in for our degree early on. It's in your 1st semester. So that's why some people are able to actually graduate after they get done at the end of their 4th year. Oh, I do have to mention, if you decide that you don't want to graduate at the end of your 4th year, but you want to walk with all your friends, you can do that. Like we've set it up with the registrar's office that if for some reason you want to walk at the end of your 4th year, you can. So that would be something you have to just discuss with the registrar's office so they are aware. And then in J2, you take women's health and family, adult health comp, intro to research. So you're seeing that you're taking a lot of your more, hands-on and kind of nursing specific classes there. And so then you start your rotations, right? So you have to do a bunch of rotations. You'll rotate through peds, psychiatric, all the different areas, and then that'll help you figure out what area of nursing you want to go into. So the T's, and I'll talk about that too in the timeline. Oh, before I talk about that though, let me just walk you through a little bit of the suggested course schedule. So of course, honestly, the 1st year is pretty much the same for everybody, where you're taking Gen Bio, Lecture Lab, you're going to take Lit-Trad 1, fill it up, and we recommend, especially if you need to take your modern language to start your 1st semester, and principles of American politics, or it could be econ or something like your A core class, right? And then spring, you're going to be Gen Bio 2, Lecture Lab, and then start your Gen Chem sequence. Lit-Trad 2 under the Bible, 1st year, 2nd semester. Then in the summer, I'm just recommending that you take nutrition, but like I said earlier, you have to be very cognizant of whether or not you're taking it at the 2 or the 3,000 level. So I recommend that you take it at the 3,000 level if you can. And then general psychology can be taken off campus, calculus can be taken off campus. One thing to note though, whenever you take a class off campus, you need to go to the chair of that department and get your form signed to get it transferred in ahead of time. So what you will do is for nutrition, let's say, you're going to say, Dr. Cody, I am planning on taking nutrition at, I don't know, UNT in Denton over the summer, and here's their course description, and let me know if you approve, and if you do, then sign this form. And I think a lot of the forms are digital now, where you could like do this entirely over email. And then the same thing's true. Psychology would be Dr. Fisher-Smith, calculus would be, I think Dr. Osenak is the chair right now. The reason why I'm saying to have them sign off now is because we can have turnover of chairs unexpectedly, for example, and then I've had students take classes and then the new chair is not going to accept what the old chair said they were, but then they never signed off on it. So you need to make sure that all of that's done ahead of time. But these are classes that can be taken off campus if you need to. You can obviously switch this around though, right? Like this is just a suggested course sequence. All right, year 2 would be Gen Chem 2, microbiology, second year language 1, econ, Western Socio. And then you have your Rome semester. I wanted to build in Rome just for anybody who wants to go. If you aren't going to go to Rome, that does provide you some level of flexibility that you wouldn't have, but nonetheless, you can get it done and also still going to Rome. The following summer, then you would take your developmental lifespan psychology class, textbooks, government, intro to statistics. And then in your third year, anatomy, American Civ, physics, strength-based, philosophy, and then your organisms to population level, lecture and lab. You do need the lab, and the reason is not because, so for the biology department, you only need 3,000 level labs, which you are going to suffice with anatomy, physiology, and micro. But because of the number of credits, you actually need 1 more credit, upper level credit. And so we just typically recommend then you would take like a lecture and a lab, for example, just an example, animal behavior lecture lab. And then you're going to do Orgo Chem 1, physiology lecture lab, physics 2, American Civ, second year language 2. If you wanted to spread it out and take some of these classes, like, you know, like maybe you're going to do 2 this semester and put 1 here, and then do 2 this summer and put 1 here, you can do that. I would recommend putting something like, I don't know, basically try to do general psychology first, because sometimes you do need that as a pre-route for your developmental lifespan psychology. So that's important, that goes first. And that comes second. But you can kind of mesh things around. The other option that a lot of my nurses have taken is actually doing physics lecture lab over the summer, and then you can backfill in some of those other classes during the semester. And I do know this summer Dr. Moldenauer is offering physics online, and I just talked to him this afternoon, and he said that it's actually mostly going to be asynchronous, even though it is put into the banner web as looking like it's going to be, you're going to be in lab all afternoon. You're actually not. And so he said, contact him if you have issues. He said that he's had students emailing him about, you know, needing to work or whatever. And so, but it is an online class. And that's the only online lab that they accept as theirs. So they do not accept online labs from outside institutions. So if you do want to take physics at another institution, again, I highly recommend that you talk to him and make sure that what you're taking is what you need to take. Usually they just want it on ground. So like, let's say you live in Austin and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go to UT in the summer and I'm gonna take physics classes. That's totally acceptable, but just make sure you get it signed off by him first. And if it's on ground, he'll accept the labs, especially if it's for UT. All right, so so the course the sequence is then that you are going to come in, and at the end of your freshman year, we want you to declare that you are interested in the 3-2 program, and we get you signed up through the registrar's office for sure if you're not already signed up. So we want you to make sure that you have declared that. And I sent, excuse me, along I should actually include it in this document. I guess I didn't include it here. I sent along a link in my email that you will fill out, and then that way it's our way to track students. And we know who is intending to be part of the program. This is not to say that I have students that are like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to do nursing. Like maybe next year I'll make a decision. And that's okay too. I would prefer that you at least fill out our form so we know that you're interested in the program, even if you're not completely registered through the registrar's office. You do need to, though, if you're declaring the program, you do need to actually say through the registrar's office, there's a special designation they're going to put on your transcript that says 3-2 program. And then the other thing is that you will take your T's the summer after your sophomore year. And that is because I get concerned that students are going to get into the fall of their junior year and then put T's off and then not do well in their T's because the deadline for nursing school application is February 1st for the following fall. So February 1st, and this can change. In fact, the dean did say that he is thinking that they are going to change it in the future, but for right now, it's February 1st for applications are due for the fall semester. And some students, because let's admit it, like this is intensive, right? So some students come to me and ask, can I stay at UD for 3.5 semesters? That's fine. And so if you want to like spread this out a little bit more, not take as many summer classes and just stay an extra semester, that's fine. And so we do have students doing that. And in that case, those applications are due by August 15th for the following January. So August 15th for spring semester, or if you want to start in a fall semester, the deadline is February 1st. So I'm just assuming in this timeline though that someone's going to be doing this in 3 years, just because I have to make that assumption. If you're not doing it in 3 years, then it's a little bit more spread out, and it ends up taking you 5.5 years instead of 5 years. But in any case, so let's say you apply February 1st for the following fall, and then you'll start that fall at Texas Women University. So it's the beginning of your 4th year. You'll start at TWU, and then you'll spend 2 years undergoing your nursing program. And the intention of the program is to graduate at both times at the same time with both degrees. However, again, that would mean that you would need to take the Women's Multicultural Study course, which can be taken during a summer. And also that may, that'll keep you in the undergraduate bin for your financial aid. But if you do graduate early, that might put you in a different financial bin. The one thing that I do want to note, because there is a former student of ours who had an issue with application, took him a really long time because he missed deadlines and didn't realize that he needed to apply to TWU itself first and then to the nursing program. So he tried on February 1st to apply, and then he realized he had not applied to TWU yet. And that process can take a few weeks. So I would recommend that you make sure that if you're applying February 1st, you've applied to TWU by like December. And then make sure you've gotten into TWU itself, which you will. And then you're going to apply to the nursing program within their university. The whole application process is actually outlined on their website, which is right here. So if you follow that link, it's going to take you to the TWU nursing website. And there's a lot of links here, but you have to, and the other thing is, and I actually don't like this, they just changed their website where you have to actually unfold. So there's these little hidden boxes here. So if you unfold how to apply and all of this information, and then this is the pre-licensure non-nurses seeking their first bachelor's degree, which is what you fall into, because when you apply to TWU nursing program, you will not have earned a bachelor's degree at that point. So this is, you'll see all of this. So this is basically Track 1, Track 2. You do not, okay, this class is only required for students who start as freshmen at TWU, so that's not a requirement for you. MSIP 1 and 2. This is, I think, politics, Texas government. This is Gen Psych, lifespan. Elementary statistics is basically interest statistics here. Nutrition, which they only require the 2000 level, but like I said, we need that 3000 level credit. Micro, anatomy, physiology. And they have anatomy and physiology together, but there's no distinction there. So our anat is fine for the anat. We just split it up differently. So in some institutions, they actually take anatomy and physiology and teach it together, but go slower. And then they have 2 semesters. But in our institution, it's all anatomy 1 semester and all physiology another semester. And this is where we're seeing other things. You need 3 hours from this. So it could be language, philosophy, and culture, creative arts, multicultural women's study. For whatever reason, this is what is on our paperwork, but that would be something that you could talk to TWU about. Is there another course that you could substitute for that? Like maybe you don't want to take that class, maybe you want to take a different one of these classes. And then additional mathematics, which you're totally fine with because you got math covered. All right, are there any questions about the program itself? Yes.
So I had a question, if someone wanted to do not the TWU program, but like a different program, is the only way to do that is to have the biology degree here? Because if a program like, say, doesn't require upper level chem courses or something, then how would someone go about that? Like, would we still just do the biology degree here?
Well, you could still just do the biology degree here. I actually have also had non-majors, let's say you're an English major or something, where they come over and they just take all their prereqs with us. It may mean that it takes a little bit longer for them to reach their 4-year degree because of all their English requirements. But that I have had non-biology majors come over and take Gen Bio 1 and 2 with us, you know, all these prereqs, anatomy, physiology. So they're graduating with all their nursing prereqs and they're graduating with a bachelor in, let's say, English, but their intention is to go on to nursing school and get a BSN or a master's degree. In terms of I think the first part of your question, if I interpret it correctly, is do you actually have to graduate with a bachelor's degree from UD? The answer is no, but then you would be coming here for 2 years and taking all this core, and the institution you'd be going to, that might not even be something that they require at all. So I mean, you could do that, like let's say, oh, I want to go to UD for 2 years and then complete that, but recognize that a lot of our core classes, like especially if you're at a public institution, are not going to require theology classes. And so they might be able to transfer them in as electives, but they might not really be counting towards your degree. So again, it's just going to take you longer. And so it makes a lot more sense to me, like if I was your parents, my advice would be just go to UD, get your bachelor's degree, and then go into an accelerated program that may take, you know, some programs say 12 months, it is a full calendar year. It's a lot of programs are more like 18 months. So it still will take you 5 to 5.5 years. It's just you're going about it a little bit different of a way. I think the biggest thing that you have to recognize is, number one, in that program, what courses are prereqs? What courses do I have to take in my undergrad to make sure that I'm prepared for their accelerated nursing program? The second thing is that you need to make sure that you have, let's see, completed all the nursing requirements and that your GPA is what it should be. You've taken all the entrance exams. Okay, so the T's are not the only entrance exam. Other schools and other states require other entrance exams. So just make sure that you understand what those requirements are. And, you know, so, but it does, it's the same thing, you're just going about it a different way. Oh, the other advantage to the dual degree program that I should mention is that it may be a competitive process. So you might want to ask the question of that institution, how competitive is this? Like you're saying that the GPA minimum, let's say, is a 3.5 in my undergrad, but what's a competitive GPA? Because that can be an entirely different question. So you want to make sure that you fully understand the entrance requirements and that you fully understand and that you have everything that you need, including, you know, GPA and all of that to get into that accelerated program. So those are all questions that I would have for that other institution, things that you need to, because that's the real selling point here, is that we have 5 dedicated slots. As long as you make those minimums, you're gonna get it. So, so that's why. But again, if you're not making that GPA, then you might want to look into maybe some other options, just graduate. Because at that point, you're gonna be probably in your 3rd year, you may as well stay an extra year, get your bachelor's from here, and then do an accelerated program.
And then, sorry, also I had another question about getting a dual degree and having the bachelor's in biology and then also the nursing. You were saying that it gives like upward mobility and possibly higher pay. Is that pretty prominent among every hospital or every nursing?
I mean, it could be highly variable, right? And so I don't want to make too broad of a generalization. But I do know that people who have a bachelor's in biology, I've talked to a few nurses and they said that, you know, on the floor, like when people have their bachelor's in biology, they tend to be looked at in more leadership roles because they have a broader background. And so like becoming head nurse faster, possibly on the floor, might occur if you have that stronger background. Yeah.
So women's multicultural studies is not like a prereq for Texas Women's, it'd be required if you're graduating.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not a prereq.
Right. It is not a prereq as long as you are not going to graduate at the same time. So I don't know if that makes sense. So if you are going to graduate in year 4 from UD, then you don't need it. Yeah.
So how do you know, like, if we do end up graduating like year 5 from UD, like how?
So then what I would recommend is if you are interested in, the graduate early option or not, or if you're confused about that, like I don't know what to do, I would recommend meeting with TWU, or at least asking for a meeting with their financial aid department to see if they could review your situation and see if it would impact your financial aid or not. If it is going to impact your financial aid and you're like, yeah, I want to just stay and I'm just going to graduate at the same time, then I would recommend taking that class in the summer.
And also, did you say that we need 30 advanced credits? Is that to graduate from UD?
Yeah.
Are those all, like, they all need to be taken on campus, like at UD, or are some of them going to transfer from Texas Women's?
We need to have, I was just going over this with Kay earlier today.
I saw, like,
I want to say 26 on our campus.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
It's 26 credits on our campus because pathophysiology and pharmacology are both 3,000 level classes that back transfer in. And I think that they use that towards the upper level credits. But I went through and counted all the credits today. And if you follow this coursework checklist, then you won't need to take this line 40 class and you will have 26 credits of upper level on our campus, which is a little different, by the way, for like a non-UD or non-nursing student. I think I can't remember. I feel like it's 32. And so many of them have to be on our campus,
right,
but it's more. Mm-hmm. And the only reason why we're getting away with it is basically because of the dual degree program. Yeah. Other questions? Okay, well, I am going to post this on the website. So I'm actually going to take down this old presentation. I will keep it, but in my back pocket, but I'm going to take it down and put this one up there and let me know if you have any questions along the way. And hopefully this was helpful in clarifying some questions that you had about the program. Have a good night.